It's Paul Ward here with the Home and Ranch team, and welcome to another 15 minutes. Today, I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about real estate appraisals and how they can impact a transaction, and want to also share a story with you that just took place. And just to give you kind of time frame, it's summertime right now, 2023, and recently sold a home here in Ventura County, California. And the appraisal was an issue. Actually, multiple appraisals became an issue. And just want to explain to you what transpired. And if you're in the real estate market, whether buying or selling, how the appraisal will potentially impact the transaction. So for a little bit of background information, there are three types of appraisals in real estate. One is the comparison approach. That's where the appraiser will take 3 to 5 other properties and compare it to the subject property. That's the traditional type of appraisal for residential real estate. The second type of appraisal is the cost approach. That's where the appraiser looks at the cost of replacing the property. So basically taking a contractor's bid or multiple contractors' bids and figuring out what it would cost to replicate that property. Not as common for residential real estate, but could be something that's used for a very unique type of a property. And then the third approach is the income approach. That's used primarily for commercial real estate. So that would be apartment buildings or maybe a strip center, looking at the ROI, the return on an investment, and the cap rate, the capitalization rate, not used for residential real estate. The comparison approach is really the approach that most appraisers use and most banks and lenders use for single-family homes. So I want to explain or just share with you a story that recently happened to me when it came to selling a custom home. And what I found out is that appraisers oftentimes have challenges. And I don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, but sometimes it seems like they don't know what they're doing when it comes to appraising custom homes. And I try to have my pulse on the market to know what's going on and knowing what a buyer is looking for. And that might not always translate to what the appraiser thinks about a property. Okay, so I recently sold a home on 1 acre. It was about 3,400 square feet, in addition to a 700 square foot bonus room above a 3-car garage. So all totaled, it was about 4,000 square feet of living space, just over 4,000 square feet of living space on 1 acre usable. And the interesting thing about this particular property was it was a single-story, sprawling single-story home that had a granny flat attached to the residence with its own separate entrance, as well as access into the primary home from the secondary granny flat. Granny flat also may be considered an ADU, additional dwelling unit, had a full kitchen, okay, a full bath, and a single bedroom, in addition to a living room with a fireplace. So it could be part of the main house, or it could be locked off separately from the main house. But it did have this secondary granny flat attached to the main house, in addition to a big bonus room above a 3-car garage. And that bonus room had a full bath. Easily could have had a little kitchenette with a hot plate, microwave, and could be even a second living space in addition to, or excuse me, a third living space in addition to the main house and the granny flat. So the folks that were selling the property, they inherited it. Mom passed away less than a year ago. And at the time of death, they had an appraisal done. Very common to have a trust do an appraisal at the time of death. And the appraiser put the property at $1.35 million. And I said, $1.35 million. I said, that would be a crime. I mean, you would be leaving a tremendous amount of money on the table if you sold this property for that cheap. And I put the property, given that it had an ADU or granny flat, and also potentially another living space above the garage. I put the property at just under 1.8 million. The backyard was also very usable. Beautiful home, needed some cosmetic fixes. Paint and carpet go a long way. But other than that, very, very livable home, and nice private, very quiet cul-de-sac location out in the country. So we get a buyer within a day, full price offer, almost 1.8 million, full price offer, 1 day on the market. And now it's time for the buyer's lender to do another appraisal. Okay, this is going to be the bank's appraiser that's going to come and justify the sale price for the loan. So now the second appraisal comes in $200,000 below the sale price. Okay, $1,580,000. Now remember, the first appraisal that I had came in at $1,350,000. Okay, we put the property on the market at almost $1,800,000, $1,795,000. And now we have another appraisal coming in at $1,580,000. So my thought is, hey, what gives? These appraisers are all over the map. Do they really know what they're doing? And again, custom home, this is not a tract home neighborhood. It's not like a, KB came in and built 5 models, or Pardee came in and built 5 models, and it's very easy to appraise, or you go on Zillow and get a Zestimate. This is all custom stuff. So I took a look at the appraisal report. 5 properties used in the appraisal report, 4 sales plus 1 that was actively listed. And these properties were not comps. Okay, yes, they were close to the subject property. We'll call the subject property, 123 Banana Street. But the other 5 properties were all very unique, and I would say dissimilar to the subject property. So one of the properties sat very close to a busy highway. Okay, property that I was selling was on a private cul-de-sac. I mean, you could not hear any traffic at all. That same property, that same subject property that sat close to the highway had a very, very large front yard, but had virtually no backyard. It was also a 4-bedroom home, while I was selling a 6-bedroom home. The second property that they put in their report was a small house. It was about 2,400 square feet. I was selling about 4,000 square feet. Okay, small house, tiny kitchen. My house had a huge kitchen. This other second property, let's call it 456 Apple Way, very dated house. Okay, the whole house needed to be refurbished. My house just needed paint and carpet. Okay, the third house that they put in their report, let's call it 678 Orange Grove Drive, 678 Orange Grove Drive, did not include a granny flat. Actually, none of the homes that they compared my property to had granny flats. So that's huge. Having a secondary living space is a huge value to a property. The next property that was used, let's call it 1219 Lemon Street, 1219 Lemon Street. This house was almost a tear down. I mean, literally nobody would move into this house, almost a tear down. Also sat on 20 acres of land. Okay, I was only selling a house on 1 acre. And the 20 acres also overlooked the busy highway. The fifth property in their report, let's call it 976 Tangerine Drive, 976 Tangerine Drive. Okay, this property was still actively listed for sale and was also a real fixer-upper. So this property really did not belong in the report, I would say, because it had not sold. It was still actively listed. We don't know what it was going to sell for. It also did not have a granny flat. So after putting all these properties in the appraisal report, the appraiser came back with a value of $1,580,000. But again, my house had a granny flat / ADU, as well as a potential ADU already constructed over a 3-car garage. Property was completely usable, all flat and usable. So you could have a pool, sport court, whatever you wanted to do in the backyard. A lot of the other properties had sloped yards that were not usable. So my advice here is, if you're going to sell your house and you get an appraisal, the appraisal might not be accurate, and it might not reflect what a buyer is truly willing to pay for the property. The uniqueness of your property really determines its value. Okay. At the end of the day, a property is worth whatever a buyer is willing to pay, not necessarily what the appraisal says it's worth. I had to convince the buyer and his agent that our property was worth every penny that he was paying, $1,795,000, which was over $200,000 above his appraisal and $450,000 above the original appraisal that the seller did. So appraisals are not always accurate, especially in custom home neighborhoods where the properties are all very unique. So very important to pay attention to the appraisal report, but also very, very important to know what buyers are looking for and what they're going to value over other properties that might be on the market. Hopefully this is helpful. Certainly reach out if you have any questions. Always here to help. Paul at homeandranchteam.com. And of course, we always want to thank our sponsor, Opus Escrow. And have a great day.